Welcome back to another episode of the Max Turn Podcast. Kyle Stitcher alongside James Finch. And today, now that we're into September, we start our hockey season previews. So this has kind of become a annual tradition. We go through each division. We have over/under odds from a major site, not a sponsor, and we will kind of discuss where we expect these teams to fall relative to their projected point total. Give you some players that if you play like fantasy hockey that might be sleepers or something along those lines, just some general thoughts on how the team looks going into the season. So we're starting in the Central, and we'll work our way through all the teams, and all our predictions are subject to change until our kind of final. We do like one final wrap up episode. At that point, we'll stake our claim and then change it mid-season, then change again like 2/3 of the way into the season, and then change again at the start of the playoffs. But you get the picture. We'll have our finalized predictions for the 25-26 season in about a month at this point. So it's kind of crazy that hockey's around the corner and we're actually starting to do these. So appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Our content, including our contract projections, are available on X, AFP Analytics, Blue Sky, Thread, same handle. And if you feel inclined to give us a monetary contribution for our work, Buy Me a Coffee can be found through our link tree. And soon we will take all proceeds that have been contributed since the start of the off season and take 10% of those and donate to Rochester Emergency Veterinary Service. Probably should pick probably at the end of September. We'll probably do that right before this. Kind of, we kept saying end of the off season. I guess that would kind of fall in line with that. So maybe end of September, early October will be when we do that. So appreciate you contributing there and any more that you feel inclined to give. So with that, I think we get into the Central Division. Again, it's crazy that we're here starting these again. I don't know. It always feels like it comes up real quick, and I don't know, this year felt even quicker.
I think we know that we like to do these episodes, and all of a sudden, schedule wise, they are pretty tight up to the start of the season as we spread each division out into its own episode. So I think it does creep up fast, especially August kind of being the quiet month. Once August is through, it's go time for the NHL season pretty much.
We also know we have to split these up into divisions because otherwise each episode would be hours and hours. We're still going to probably spend way too long talking about 8 teams because that's what we like to do. So if you're new, we appreciate you tuning in this kind of year. But if you're a seasoned veteran listening, you'll know how we kind of do it. We start at the bottom of the projected standings in the division, talk about the point total, talk about players, potentially fantasy sleeper, stuff along those lines. So starting in the Central Division, we start with, to no one's surprise, the Chicago Blackhawks. Over under 68.5 points. Last season, they finished with 61 points. Lost, moved out, not returning. I'm not even going to say subtracted because some teams that we might get to, you might actually say it was an addition by subtraction.
Yep.
So out, Joe Veleno, Patrick Maroon, Philip Kurashev, Alec Martinez, and Craig Smith. In player-wise, Sam Lafferty, Andre Burakovsky, Dom Toninato, borderline fringe player. I didn't know whether to include him, but he could be a depth forward on the NHL roster.
Could show up on the fourth line.
Yeah. And experience being up and down, so maybe would be a good veteran presence for some of the younger guys as well. I think maybe the biggest, though, additions, maybe not head coach, so they bring in Jeff Blashill. I think one of the biggest additions that might be sneaky good for them is Michael Pekka as an assistant coach. Did you work with him in Rochester at all, or was that a little bit post?
No. I never really interacted with assistant coaches.
Okay.
I He might have been. I was Taylor. I don't know if Pekka was.
With Chris Taylor.
Yeah,
Anyways, I
maybe.
maybe
I
he was.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I again didn't really interact
Yeah.
with even the coach, like the main coaches, that much. Was more video.
Yeah.
But Taylor, I interacted with on numerous occasions.
Anyways, I know that Michael Pekka was very knowing the video coaches throughout the years with the Rochester Americans. I know that Michael Pekka was very, very highly thought of, and I
Yes.
mean, as well as around the league, it's become very apparent how quickly he worked up kind of the ranks and everything. So he is very, very highly regarded. He did a lot of, he was very got a lot of praise for developing some of the young Sabres players as well.
I didn't
So
interact with
yeah,
Pekka. I didn't think so. He
yeah,
wasn't on Taylor's staff.
yeah, he was a year or two later. So
Yep.
anyways, with that, Chicago Blackhawks 68.5. What do you like for them?
I'm gonna say over, which over would be a pretty big jump. So 61 points last season. So predicting 8 points at least above, and I guess you could break that down however you want, but let's say 4 more wins. I think they can do it. I think the goalie tandem's going to help them a little bit, having Spencer Knight there a full year. Soderblom was decent last year. Their forward group isn't too much different. I'm hoping we see a little bit of a step forward from Bedard, and maybe just kind of over the years, the last couple of years, there's been a lot of veteran additions, and maybe just 1 year in, things click a little better this year. Where I'm a little more excited about the team is actually their defensive group. They've got a lot of young defensemen. Vlasic, Rinzel, Levshinov, Kaiser, kind of being, in theory, a top four of the future. You still have Connor Murphy there as a good veteran presence, but that's kind of the boom or bust spot for me with the Blackhawks is like that could be a huge issue for them, just having that much youth on the team defensively, but there's a lot of skill there. We'll see.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I'm gonna lean over as well. I wouldn't feel comfortable about it. And
Yeah.
yeah, on paper, I was looking, and yeah, that blue line looks potentially very good. It's there's going to be rough patches,
Yes.
and Chicago could be one of those teams that starts off horrendously, but maybe towards the mid to end of the season, they're the team that teams fighting for the playoffs maybe don't want to see because things are starting to click and get and kind
Yeah.
of get move forward. I had highlighted bring in Pekka because I think that could be a very big impact on Bedard and Frankie Nazar,
Yep.
who just fairly recently signed a long-term contract extension. Which so that the Blackhawks obviously are very high on him to commit that type of term and dollar to him, and I guess he's kind of an addition, if you will, because he didn't even play a full season up in the NHL last year, so he's a little bit of an addition to the lineup as well. So their top six is okay. If Bedard takes a step forward, it's fine. So I think they can
Yeah.
get some goals. Their third line, if they roll out like a Foligno, Dickinson, Ilya McCabe, that third line's not going to score for you necessarily, but that's a pretty solid all around like third line matchup line. So
Yeah.
that's good. Burakovsky, we'll see what that. He was not good in Seattle, but maybe he is what Bedard needs someone who historically has been fairly strong defensively. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think just on paper, the names individually, they could have a solid team here, but it didn't work last year with a lot of the names. So that's kind of where I was getting with maybe just a year in. Also, new coach, that could be good or bad to them being able to find chemistry quickly. But I like to think there's enough there and enough positive with some of the younger players that are going to be on the roster that they can be a little bit better than they were last year. And then I guess, like you said, maybe it's more of a mid year we start to see them really doing well. And maybe they turn into that team where they're clearly not going to make the playoffs, but it's kind of a let's see what they do this offseason and maybe watch out for Chicago next year.
Yeah, I think we're both leaning over. I think seven. I think maybe they can get to 70 points this year, which puts them
Yeah.
just over, but not comfortably. So,
Yep.
any sleepers on this team that you would be looking to get? I mean, Bedard's not a sleeper.
I wouldn't necessarily say sleeper. I think Sam Renzel will get some of the bigger minutes and even power play time. So maybe that's just a younger rookie that's not really on the radar in fantasy drafts that can be a bench spot for you.
Yeah, him or Levshinov.
Yeah.
I just butchered that. I know, but
Well, Levshinov, yeah.
yeah,
Well, we'll see how it works out. I think he's viewed a little more as kind of a stay-at-home guy,
yeah,
but either one of them could end up playing big minutes, which in fantasy can mean numerous of things for defensive players or
yeah.
defensemen specifically.
I'm assuming Nazar, given the fact that he's just got that big contract, he's going to be a little bit more on the radar. But
Yeah.
if you're in a league with maybe slightly more casual followers, they might not realize that he's going to have a very big role in Chicago this year. So I don't know if I'd say I don't think he's a sleeper because people who kind of know fantasy and follow the sport should be on that.
Yeah.
But he would be a name that if he is sitting around, if you're doing just a redraft, if you're in a redraft lead and he's sitting around a little bit later, you should absolutely scoop him up.
Yep.
So that's Chicago. 68.5 points was their over under. Keep in mind, I pulled these from one site. I'm not going to say the site because they're not a sponsor. If they do want to sponsor, let us know. But I pulled these so this could differ a little bit. But interesting, next team up in the division is Nashville. That's not surprising. I think the jump from where Chicago is to where Nashville's over under is surprising.
Yes.
Nashville over under 86 and a half after they finished last year with 68 points. And their additions and players moved out might have been the shortest list of everyone that I went through today.
Yeah.
In Nick Perbix, Nick Hague, out Colton Sissons, Jeremy Lazan, and Mark Del Gazo. And we can argue how much of a subtraction or out Del Gazo is, but
He was good for them last year.
so I guess Perbix Hague replaced Lazan Del Gazo, and they subtract Colton Sissons from their forward group. And they're projected 86.5 points.
To me, okay, I can easily see people saying, all right, they shouldn't be at 68 points again with their roster. I don't love their roster by any means, but I can see people coming to that conclusion. I don't know if I really see them making up like 18, 19 points.
That's almost 10 wins.
Yeah. So for me, it's a pretty easy under at this point in time, and I really, like you said, we'll kind of lock things in at the very start of the season, but I'm not sure my opinion will change much there unless that over under gets lowered a bit.
Yeah, I was shocked that's how high it was, because I agree with you. I think naturally there's going to be some positive regression. Just about everything that could have went wrong for Nashville last year went wrong, including
Right.
Yusei Saros having a very down season. That doesn't seem like that should continue. I would have thought maybe like 75 to 80 points would have been an interesting number to have set this at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm maybe a little bit more skeptical of where I go. I could see them getting up to 75, 80. I mean, the other thing is this division, Chicago's Chicago. Like they're not
Yes.
they're not a world beater. But we're going to talk about the other 6 teams, and man, there's some tough competition.
The rest of the division, it will be difficult to kind of steal points there.
Yeah. So that alone, I don't. It feels very difficult to envision a way that they get that many points, especially in the division that they're going to be playing in. Even the West this year as a whole might be pretty strong. We'll get to the Pacific in the future, but yeah, the West this year might be pretty good. So just finding points, I don't know. I don't feel great about that. Their blue line is still, I mean, they're expecting Nick Perbix and Nick Hague to dramatically improve. Perbix is a nice depth defenseman. Absolutely, like he's fine.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. Hague, according to Barry Trotz, is going to play up in the lineup further. That might be a problem.
Yes.
Yossi, hopefully his health is good, but there's been some
There's
concerns.
concern there.
And then Brady Shea just was not good last year.
No, you need to hope he bounces back at least a little bit.
I don't know.
I Defensively, they're not great. They need to kind of hope that they can be average, and I think that might be a kind of a tall task for that group. At forward, they potentially have a fairly weak top six. Depending on how it all shakes out, they most likely for sure have a weak top nine.
I think I missed one addition. Eric Holla in as
Oh, yep.
well.
Yep.
I guess I missed that in the trade, but my apologies. But
Yep. And like fourth line, it could be fine. But they just all of their high end talent, not all of it, a good amount of it is older players who are declining. I don't know if Forsberg is enough as the number one elite player at forward. He's very good, but I there's not enough of a supporting cast, I don't think.
yeah, it's not like he's super young either. He's
Right.
not as old,
Yeah.
but he's
Right.
he's right around 30.
So I just not enough positive changes there for me to be too excited about them. You kind of mentioned a positive regression. That's where I'm at. I fully agree with that, but not to the extent of choosing over 86.5. So I'm pretty comfortably saying under, barring something big happening.
Yeah, I'll make my really bad pun. Well, I guess the one thing Nashville we couldn't say about Nashville's blue line from the start of the year is they're pretty nicked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be completely healthy, but they're going to be pretty nicked up most of the year.
Blankenberg. Forgot he was there.
Yep,
Yep.
Blankenberg, Hague, and Perbix. There you go. Now you, our listeners, understand what my wife deals with on a daily basis.
So over Chicago, we both had over under Nashville from both of us.
Yeah.
And as you kind of referenced, this is what we view as kind of a split in the division a little bit as far as I guess how seriously we should be taking these teams. I think from here on out, the next six that we're talking about all have a path to the playoffs,
Yeah.
which it starts with St. Louis.
91.5 is the over under. Finished last year with a torrid finish with 96 points. Another team that had fairly short list of changes. Logan Malou for Zach Bolduc was their big move of the year.
Yep.
And then they basically swapped out Nick Bukestad in, Radek Foxa out, and then Pia Suter being the big addition. I'm like, why do I have Suter twice? Pia Suter in,
Swapped out
Ryan
suitors.
Suter out. That is an upgrade. So that's
Not the
probably
same position,
not
but
the same position.
yes,
No.
they got the better suitor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although Ryan Suter still he was fine as like a depth guy. But yes, ultimately positive value added there.
Yeah, and I think Pia Suter probably suits the needs of St. Louis a little bit better.
Yes.
Pun very much intended again. Where do you stand on St. Louis?
So to me, this was a team at 96 points. I would have said, okay, I don't think I'm there. 91.5 is a very tough decision. I think I'm going to say over, but I am at like 92, 93 points.
I think I have to build a brand as a Blues hater after my Robert Thomas comment a couple weeks, a month ago, I think at this point. I don't know. I'm gonna lean under here. I think that they're. I don't know if they get to 90. I think they're very close.
Okay.
So Montgomery came in, and I think Jim Montgomery is a very good coach, and obviously that was very positive for the team. Just like we talked about Nashville, maybe things went about as bad as they could have. St. Louis under Montgomery to kind of finish out the year maybe went about as well as they could have. So maybe
Yeah. They were also bad before he was there.
That's also fair. I think probably the big addition is Jimmy Snuggerud.
Yeah, that's kind of a sneaky ad, even though he's not technically an addition.
Yeah, however we want to look at that.
Yeah.
That's if he plays up to what he kind of showed in the small amount of playoff games that he played, St. Louis probably goes over. But that's asking quite a bit out of him. And again, I think a lot has to go right for them. And I think a little bit higher on other teams in the division.
Okay.
To me, them and Minnesota are probably the two that will be battling it out for maybe the fifth spot, which is where one of the teams will need to get in order to qualify for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert a little bit, but not really.
Well. Yeah.
But so I'm going to lean under for St. Louis also to be a little different, but Zach Bolduc out, that has the potential to be an issue.
I will 100% agree there. I don't love that move for St. Louis. I can sort of see the logic to it. They want a younger defenseman with some potential, and they didn't really have that coming. But Bolduc was good. And you knew that. You saw that in the NHL. So that's kind of the difference is now you're acquiring a defenseman that you don't know that they're going to ultimately play a big role.
Yeah. Yeah, that's potentially a not that it's a down it should be an upgrade over Ryan Suter, but it's a very much of an unknown.
Right. And I guess I'll say, flipping to the other side, they could kind of see, all right, Snuggerud came in, was very good. Um, the way their lineup's looking to shake out right now, you still have a player like Jake Neighbors on the third line. So maybe they kind of saw, all right, we've got a forward group pretty locked in. Let's use one of those players to try and fill a more long-term need. I can see the logic there. I don't know if I love the trade in general.
Yeah, I understand why they did it. I agree with you. I don't know if I would have said yes, do it, looking at the two players and everything.
Yep.
One other, Cam Fowler, when he came in last year, was actually
Yeah.
really good with St. Louis. That's another place where I'm a little bit skeptical of, is that a level that he can replicate, even now being a year older too. And then same with Justin Falk. Like, there's some age questions there.
Parayko had a very good
Yep.
season, and he could still have a solid season this year, but does he repeat that great of a year that he had?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Dylan Holloway also had basically a career year. Phil Broberg was
Yeah.
also very good. There's a lot of names on the Blues that may have overachieved. I mean, it's possible that maybe they did collectively take a step forward, especially with
Yeah.
a very good coach. But I'm skeptical that we saw a little bit of a mirage at the end of the year. They did give the Jets some trouble in the playoffs, but that could be a matchup thing as well. So, anyways, I'll lean under St. Louis just because I think I'm a little bit higher on some of the other teams in the division.
Okay.
Namely, next team up, Utah Mammoth. Set over under 93 and a half. Finished last year at 89 points. They had one of the busier off seasons, bringing in JJ Paterka from Buffalo. They sent out Michael Kesselring and Josh Doan in that trade. Also brought in Brandon Tanev, shore up their fourth line a little bit. Nate Schmidt, who was really good down the stretch with the Florida Panthers. He's kind of their Kesselring replacement, if you will. Should play on the third line. Scott Punovich.
Perunovich.
Perunovich. I knew I was gonna mess it up. I always think there's a letter there that's not. He's a sneaky, nice depth defenseman. Shouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily be. He's probably not going to necessarily crack the regular lineup. But as far as seventh defensemen go, and considering Utah had some issues on the blue line with health last year,
Yeah.
having him like that could be a sneaky big addition. And then they also bring in Vintek Vanacek in goal. He and Connor Ingram will probably split the backup duties behind Karol Vejmelka. Out, I mentioned Kesselring and Doan. Matthias Maselli traded to Toronto. I don't know how much of an out that is, considering he wasn't playing a ton anyways. Robert Bortuzzo retired, and then Nick Bukestad out. So Schmidt is an upgrade over Bortuzzo. Tanev probably an upgrade at this point over Bukestad.
Yeah.
It's maybe similar.
I
Maybe
wouldn't.
similar.
I wouldn't say an upgrade. I think from
Different
like pure analytical impacts, it's a downgrade. Very different.
flavor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is it's what they're going for. Their fourth line is just that might be the most brutal fourth line to play against from like a
Yeah.
physical standpoint. Bugstad still has it together a little bit more as far as not trying to be mean here, but being good at hockey. like Tanev does not have the greatest impacts offensively and specifically defensively as well. So we'll see.
Anyway,
I mean,
but
I love the move as far as like the
yeah,
vibe of that fourth line. That's gonna be fun.
regardless, on paper, the top three lines
Yes.
and their blue line look very, very good. They made the big trade for Paterka, and he might not even be on the top line.
He's likely. I mean, we'll see how it shakes out, I guess, but it's very possible he's a second line winger for them.
Some combination of Keller, Cooley, Gunther, Paterka, like that's a
Yeah,
good problem to have. It's a very good problem to have.
whoever gets kicked out of that, which Cooley will be first line center, but you have three first line wingers with Keller, Genther, and Paterka. Obviously, you can't do that. So one of them will end up with Hayton and Schmaltz, which will be a very solid second line.
Yeah, because Barry Hayton's no slouch as a center, and Nick Schmaltz is a very steady, maybe underrated career player.
Yes, I think so. He's pretty consistent. So, and he's kind of Chicago caught the tail end of good Chicago teams, and then off to Arizona has kind of been hidden a little bit.
Then I'm not going to say they're going to have the best third line in hockey, but Lawson Krause, Jack McBain, and Alex Kerfoot is a very good third line
Yeah.
though. And then, as you had mentioned, their fourth line will be interesting.
Very possible they get caved in, but no one's going to want to be on the ice against them. So,
Liam O'Brien, Kevin Stenlin, and Brandon Tanev will likely be that fourth line.
yep.
Their blue line, just six really solid players: Sergachev, Marino, Mata, Dursey, Schmidt, Cole are probably the ones that are playing regular minutes, but just no superstar there, but just really, really solid guys.
Yeah, so you, I think, made it clear right away you were over the 93 and a half.
I very much am over.
Which again, that's jumping from 89 points last year to at least 94. I think I'm also over with Utah.
We didn't give fantasy sleepers for like three teams, so we probably should go back and do that. As is tradition, we forget to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll start with Nashville, I guess. I don't have a fantasy sleeper per se. Mainly, you know what you're going to get from a Stamkos and March, so don't overdraft if they're hanging out there because they're on Nashville and they're bad. Maybe there's some value.
Depending on the scoring in your league, exactly, Haru could be an interesting pickup if hits are something that is a positive. Matthew Wood prospect that I don't know if that would be a sleeper, but that's maybe a
Maybe.
little bit of a deeper pull again, depending on type of league you're in. I wouldn't, because of how Barry Trotz talked, I wouldn't sleep on Nick Hague because, as you had laid out
Yeah.
for Chicago, defensemen who get lots of minutes are not the worst players to have in fantasy. And if he's going to play a bigger role in Nashville, that might be someone who you might want to take a look at.
St. Louis sleepers, fantasy sleepers.
I don't know if Snuggerud counts as a sleeper.
I think that's kind of similar situation to what you were talking about in Chicago is like a very casual hockey fan. If that's what your league's made up of, maybe you can get him pretty good value, but if it's someone who follows intently, probably not a sleeper.
How about Joel Hofer? How's that for a sleeper? As
Maybe.
I know he's not going to be the starter, but he might be one of the better backup goalies in the league. So if something did happen to Bennington, you suddenly have maybe a very good goalie that you drafted very late.
Yeah, I'd say it probably depends how many bench spots you're working with, how many teams, or how deep of a league it is. But that wouldn't be a bad late round pick.
Do you have a guy?
No, honestly, I don't. For St. Louis, it's pretty straightforward for me. Most of the names you'll recognize. Utah.
Again, this is another like depending on how deep of a league, how deep of hockey knowledge. Barrett Hayton might qualify here.
Yeah.
Might he shouldn't, but again, if you're in a slightly more casual league, especially if you're like an East Coast person and in with other East Coast people. Previously, the Coyotes did not get much exposure. Utah probably gets a little bit more now, but he's someone that's been in the league for a while, but is been a pretty good middle six center for a couple years now. That I guess that'll be my contribution here.
Okay. I'm going to say, as my computer freezes up here, I think it would be good to monitor the defenseman a little bit. So Sergachev's the number one guy there. If you luck out, a lot of the other people in the league are looking at the stats from last season and not projected stats for this season. Sean Dursey might not look attractive to them because he was out hurt a bit. So potential he's someone that could fall. That would be a very good pick. He's usually strong offensively. Not elite, but kind of the next tier.
I think he was also quarterbacking maybe their first power play unit
Okay.
when he was healthy
Yeah.
last year. I think that's right.
And then as more of like a true sleeper, watching what Nate Schmidt did last year for Florida in really the highest of stakes. If there's any type of injury, Sergachev, Dursey, there's not an obvious power play guy other than Schmidt. He'd be Oli Mata, John Marino, Ian Cole. I think Schmidt's pretty easily the first one stepping into some power play time.
I mean, I could also even see Utah's second unit running two defensemen, in which case Schmidt could be
Yeah, maybe.
on that too. So I was going to
Yeah.
go there, but it's kind of like, okay, is he going to get enough power play minutes? But yes, I fully agree with you. If he's someone who does rotate in with the second power play unit from the start, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely sleeper there. So I gave my over. What did you? Where were you're leaning over as well?
I'm over. I think it's close for me, but I think they could get to 95. I'll say I like 95 as a number for them.
Utah's actually the team I've been on for like sleeper purposes. So if you ask me like, oh, who would be a fun like Stanley Cup futures bet or something, or like make the playoffs or something along those lines, I've steered towards Utah.
Yep.
They should be a lot of fun to watch at least.
Yeah.
They should score some goals. They might give up some goals too, but I'm buying into Utah this year, so could be completely wrong there. Next, Minnesota Wild dragged out with Marco Rossi for a while this summer, but that's taken care of before camp opens, which is important. Over under 94 and a half last season, finished with 97 points. In Vladimir Tarasenko, Nico Sturm, and Nick Obey-Kubel. Out Travis Boyd, Justin Brazeau, Declan Chisholm, Marc-Andre Fleury, Gustav Nyquist, and Freddie Gaudreau. Probably should add in as well Jesper Wallstedt.
Yep.
As,
So Flurry out means Wallstedt will be up as the backup.
and then potentially Zeev Bouillon as well as another in.
I I've got another addition for you.
Yeah.
Kirill Kaprizov
Yeah.
missed enough time last year.
Yeah, he did. Danilo Yurov too.
Yeah.
Edition.
I mean,
But
I'll say my main point though is Kaprizov, if he can have a healthy season, that might be bigger than any addition or subtraction that they have made.
didn't Boldy also miss some time at the start of last year as well?
I think so. That there was a point in time where I think they were very, very banged up. I think Eriksson Ek missed time. So up front at one point or another, they were not in a good place.
Yeah.
I'm going to say over. So to reiterate, 97 points last season. This is set at 94 and a half. I think they can get to last season's number.
I fully agree. They don't have there's no obvious like, oh, they got worse here. There's a lot of lateral moves to me,
Yeah.
and maybe that's a problem, but I don't yeah. If they can be a little bit healthier than they were last season, I fully agree that they should have no problem at least matching last year's point total.
One thing of note, I think Brodeen's going to miss a little bit of time, which
Correct.
is not insignificant. We're discussing injuries right now. That's one that's they're already dealing with. So, as someone who's usually, well, easily a top 4 guy for them, and oftentimes a top 2, that could hurt to start the year. Hopefully, they can kind of tread water and be fine. I think for me, it really just comes down to Kaprizov. He was at the very start of the season, he was looking like the clear favorite as Hart Trophy.
Yeah.
Not saying it's going to start off the same exact way for him. He is one of the best players in the NHL, so it very well could. Yeah, it's all about health for me with Minnesota. I lean towards it won't be as bad as last year, so I'm going to say over the 94 and a half.
Any fantasy sleepers?
Possibly Boyum or Urov, kind of the younger new guys on the team.
Yeah, that's where I was leaning as well.
It's very possible they both end up, I guess maybe more so Urov. It's possible ends up in a little bit lesser of a role, but both of those players could very well find themselves in some good power play minutes and maybe even higher in the lineup with a bigger role than we think.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of
Like it,
there's a potential top 6 spot open depending like so we're using cap wages depth charts. We probably should have said that a long time ago. And the current depth chart has Tarasenko as the second line right winger. I mean, I think Minnesota has a lot of like anyone could play anywhere type
yeah,
players basically, especially up front. So it's really hard to kind of project where their lines are going to be. But Kaprizov, Boldy, definitely in the top 6. Zuccarello, as long as healthy, is probably in the top 6. Rossi should be in the top 6, but
he also played fourth line minutes in the playoffs.
exactly. So I was also going to throw out if you're in a league that, depending on how casual, how much people pay attention, Rossi could be actually an interesting little sleeper as well. Not
Yep.
that was not a height joke throwing in a little there,
Well,
but
now it is.
now it is. And then Joel Eriksson Ek's probably in the top 6 as well. So that there's 5 names that I just said, but Liam Ogren, Daniil Yurev, Vladimir Tarasenko, even Ryan Hartman's played like middle six
Yeah.
minutes before. Any of those guys could find their way onto the second line.
Another situation, depending on how deep of a league you have, and assuming your league values hits, Marcus Foligno could potentially be a good late round bench guy to have,
Yeah.
assuming he stays healthy. He was another one who I believe missed a little bit of time last year.
Yeah, let me give you a really deep pull as well. Not expecting rookie to crack the lineup, but Riley Heidt was lit up the WHL as far as scoring last year. Again, depending on what type of league you're in or anything like that, but that's someone that I would at least, if you're trying to maybe find someone at a later round or someone as like a stash for a little while, see how things go in like training camp for him, depending on when you draft and everything like that. But he's probably one of the higher upside forwards that are in the system right now. So just kind of like if injuries hit again,
Right.
that could be a name that you see getting some maybe second line minutes depending on how things go. The 90 points in the WHL last year is nothing to
Oh, yeah.
sneeze at.
So I said over Minnesota, 94.5.
I'm over as well.
Over?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to kind of do a quick check in here, I have, of the 5 teams we've talked about so far, I have 4 of them over. You have 3 of them over.
Yeah.
I'm under just on Nashville. You're under on Nashville and St. Louis.
And this is exactly why I'm under on St. Louis. Is you're
Yeah.
over on 4 other teams.
Yeah. Well, this is probably where the top of the standings here we might differ a little bit, but that kind of leads us right into the third team as far as the point over and under. 98.5 for the Winnipeg Jets. Quite a different number considering last season they were at 116.
Yeah. I think we start with who left, and that's Nick Ehlers.
Yep.
Brand Tanev also out. Mason Appleton also out. Rasmus Kupari out. And I had mentioned Dom Tonnato went to Chicago, so he I don't think he played an NHL game last year, but also out. In Jonathan Toews, Tanner Pearson, Philip DiGiuseppe, Gustav Nyquist, Walker Dueller.
Yeah.
And probably should add to the out, Adam Lowry will miss some time to start the season.
Yes.
Not insignificant there. You're
I'll
looking,
start it off if
yeah,
you
because
want.
I don't know where to go with this.
I don't know. I don't know if this is a hot take at 98.5, but I think I'm under on Winnipeg. Even the past couple of years, for me, Winnipeg plays a very specific, unique type of game and are oftentimes carried by their goalie. I don't know how long they can do that and also neglect needs offensively. So Ehlers leaving and not really replacing him, that's an issue to me. They've got a good amount of players who kind of fit the stereotypical Winnipeg Jet, at least of the past half decade. Niederreiter, Nemesnikov, Iafallo, just that very good defensive forward. But I'm none of those guys are putting up 40 points unless they're playing in the top six, which leads me to say it's possible one or even two of them will end up in the top six, which is not a good thing. With Lowry out, it's very possible one of those players, as I mentioned, is in the top six, or Jonathan Taves, who hasn't played in a couple of years, and then a couple of years at the end of his career did not go well, or end of, I guess, his first run in the NHL did not go well. Gus Nyquist is probably not a top six winger anymore. Cole Perfetti was better last year. I still think they want more from him. And then first line, I don't mind Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Gabe Velarde. You're going to get some production there. But just in general, I think they're banking a lot on guys who are best fit lower in the lineup, and then Taves to come back and all of a sudden be elite Chicago Blackhawk Cup winning Jonathan Taves. And I think that's just, I hope it happens. It'll be awesome to see it happen. I think it's extremely unlikely.
Yeah. I I think staring at this with as you're kind of talking through, I think I lean under as well. My hesitation is I'm betting against Connor Hellebuck, and I that
Yeah.
doesn't feel good. The other thing I'll kind of point out that it could be a little bit of a cause for concern is there's already a little bit of smoke around Kyle Connor and his the fact he's going into the last season of his contract, and
Yeah.
maybe he's staying, maybe he's not. Like there's already a little
Which
bit there.
I'll say it's concerning considering the makeup of the team
Yeah.
right now. At the same time, a lot of the top extension eligible UFAs still need to potentially sign an extension.
Yeah.
And if I'm Kyle Connor, like I'm maybe kind of waiting to see if Kaprizov gets done.
Yeah.
Probably slot in under Kaprizov, but that might help move him up a little bit. So I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about it, but because yeah, you just lost Ehlers, there's a little bit more pressure probably around that team right now. And his future possibly being I'm out the door just like Ehlers was. That's not ideal.
Yeah, one thing I the Jets have historically been a team that wants their prospects to play multiple AHL seasons. Braden Yeager might get forced into this lineup out of necessity, like especially with Lowry out, depending on where how Tays looks coming back. Like they're already kind of thin at center. They don't have a lot of scoring punch at center right now, so wonder if he could slot in. Wonder if like Brad Lambert could slot in to provide some scoring.
Maybe.
But again, historically, the Jets have not done that with their minor league players. Ville Hinola is still in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a little bit of scoring punch to come, but yeah, right now on paper, this roster's not great. Their blue line's fine, but not superior enough to kind of make up for the potential scoring deficiencies. And it's not like they have a it's not like their blue line are guys necessarily known for offense either. Morrissey's become very good offensively, and Pionk's probably the exception there, but
Yeah.
Dylan DeMello,
Yeah.
Dylan Sandberg, Luke Shen are stay-at-home guys. Hayden Fleury's depth player at this point.
Sandberg did have a little bit of a breakout, but I don't think he's necessarily expected to
No,
take a step offensively.
no.
We both said we're leaning under for sure, I think, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
since you were kind of on the defense, I wanted to mention Morrissey as he's not a sleeper by any means. He might be viewed as the low end of the higher end defenseman. So potentially the way, however the draft goes, there could be some value in maybe going forward first and trying to grab him kind of at the tail of the initial defenseman taken.
yeah. Outside, so Makar, Fox, Darlene, Hughes, Evan Bouchard,
Yeah.
for fantasy purposes, should go ahead of Morrissey.
Yep.
After that, you could justify him the next off the board, and there might be other defensemen, as you rightfully said, that might go before that, or other teams
Yeah.
might look at before that. So he legitimately might be the sixth best defenseman to have for fantasy purposes, and yeah, maybe it does not get drafted as such. So I think that's a good pull there.
As far as like a strategy standpoint too,
Yeah,
that could very much be all right. I'll let everyone else take the top defenseman and try and snag an extra high end forward right away, and maybe I don't know. It might depend on the pick you have too, but maybe you're doing a snake draft, you might be able to loop around and snag Morrissey quick.
yeah, and he's probably not that, as you're rightfully pointing out, not that far away from some of those guys that I mentioned that should be drafted ahead of him.
Yes.
Value wise, he's not that far off. I'll go for my sleeper. You know what? I'll go Brandon Yeager. Braden Yeager, sorry.
Okay.
Braden Yeager. I knew I was gonna do that once. Braden Yeager. And that's a deep pull, and that's someone you're probably just putting on your bench and stashing, but just talking through the where things sit with their forward group right now, there's a very good chance that he plays some legitimate minutes, either early or mid-season or something, especially if things don't go well with Tays and Lowry. Lowry remains out.
I'm not going to say Taves because I think enough people are going to make a decision. They either want to draft him or
Yeah,
they're going to
yeah.
completely stay away, and that's fine. I don't know if I'm saying this to drive home the points I just made of why I'm picking the under or if I'm actually a little impressed. The past 2 seasons, Vladislav Nemesnikov, 37 points, 38 points. That's not anything too special for fantasy purposes, but I'm more mentioning his name as they don't have a 2C. And in the past, he's done fine filling in that role. It's not impossible to potentially see him as the main 2C at some point this year.
Or you're just publicly talking yourself into why our decisions and the fantasy team we're co-running in this dynasty league were validated, because
True.
we had a lot riding on making sure we secured Vladislav Nemestikov towards the end of the free agent period. So
Yeah.
maybe
I,
that's why he's providing it for you
I,
folks.
I
But
wouldn't put him high on the list of sleepers we're talking about, but in some seriousness, like that's a situation to monitor.
yes,
Because
yeah,
if whoever is Winnipeg 2C is on your bench, like that's maybe actually decent value.
yeah. Because I mean that's exactly why we actually did kind of
Yeah.
talk ourselves into that as a decision. So moving on, two more teams. We'll do the team that finished last season with less points, because both
Yeah.
Colorado and Dallas are projected 105.5. So Colorado finished last year with 102. In Brent Burns, Victor Olson, Nikita Gushin And Gavin Brindley, probably not NHL, but I thought that maybe it was noteworthy enough to include. Out, Jonathan Drouin, Ryan Lindgren, Charlie Coyle, Miles Wood, and I'm blanking on his first name.
Oscar,
Oscar Olsen.
I think.
Again, not a huge NHL subtract out anyways. I'll just come out and say I'm leaning under. I don't see Colorado being that much better on paper than they were last year. And I know you're going to probably rebuttal with some very good valid points, but I'm going to lean under. I've kind of soured on Colorado over the past year or so.
This is a very tough one for me. I think I'm going to say under as well. Do you want to list some reasonings, or you want me to go for it and you can add?
You can go, yeah.
Okay. The whole Rantanen situation, I don't know if it really is leaving a bad vibe, I guess, for the lack of a better word to use. But I don't think we can completely pretend it didn't happen. And I think there might be a little bit of not an issue amongst the team, but I could see a player like McKinnon not loving that happened and still kind of not being thrilled about it. I don't know if there's I'm not at all saying there's definitely an issue with the vibes in that room. It's very possible that's not the case. And it's very possible that's not the case because they also were able to bring back Landeskog, which was a huge positive. He looked good when he played, but then just the emotion and the story behind it was such a huge positive for the team that I think at times, if it hadn't been the fact that they were playing Rantanen in the playoffs, Colorado would have completely forgot about the Rantanen situation because of how big of a deal Landeskog returning was. Not to now downplay that. I feel better about Landeskog than I do about Jonathan Toews because we were able to see it.
Yeah.
We still have no idea really what Landeskog is going to bring for a full season.
Yeah, we saw him play 7 games in the playoffs. Not even 4 games in the playoffs.
And like he looked good.
Yes,
but can he put together 82?
No,
I would lean towards he can't.
He's not playing 82. There's
so
no way.
If it's 60, or are they happy with 60? And even then, 60 games, do they all look as good as the 4 or whatever ended up being in the playoffs? We don't know. He is potentially a very important part. Well, like looking at the roster, he's a very important part to their top 6. Now on the wings, they're going to have Necas, Nichushkin, Lehkonen, and Landeskog. It's very possible he's kind of like the 4th winger on this team. And they ended up signing Victor Olofsson, which I think is for their roster a very smart signing. Good third line scoring, but also some insurance for Landeskog or Nichushkin or Necas, whoever. But Landeskog to me is as fun as it is and awesome to see that he was able to return. He's still very much an unknown for this upcoming season.
So let me fact check ourselves real quick.
Yes.
Played 5 games in the playoffs.
Okay.
4 points. Averaged 17 minutes of time on ice.
Yeah.
The last kind of full season. The last couple seasons he averaged right around 20. His entire career he's averaged 20 minutes time on ice,
Okay.
basically.
Yeah. So I mean, like, he looked good. It's just how often can he replicate that throughout a full season?
Let me also point out another thing that I think is very relevant for his situation. NHL is going to take the Olympic break in February.
Yeah.
That means that the schedule is extra condensed this year because they're still starting around the same time and the regular season still finishing basically the same time. So that means more back to backs, more 3 and 4s, stuff along those lines. So there's probably going to have to be, so 60 might even be optimistic because I don't know how many back to backs he's going to play.
So there's that. In my head, I haven't paid much attention to Olympic international rumors or anything. You mentioned Olympic break. Very initially, my thought is, well, that could be good for him. But real quick after that thought was he might be playing in the Olympics.
Yeah, he's the type of
Like,
player that's going to want to
yeah.
represent his country. Yeah.
So it might not actually be a break for him, even though he may very much need it. Well, we'll see. I don't think we really know the answer to that yet, but that's the biggest number one thing for me with this team is Landeskog is a question mark. I mentioned Olofsson as a good signing for some depth scoring. When they traded Charlie Coyle, I was kind of expecting another move to come as far as an addition. Because now we're kind of looking at, like, is Jack Drury gonna be 3C? Is Ross Colton 3C, or is he on the wing? If he's 3C, then who's the winger? I feel like third line, even with that Olofsson addition, it might be a touch thin.
Yeah, I was kind of going to go with there's a pretty clear divide, pretty black, pretty white. Top 6 very good, bottom 6 very thin.
Yeah.
Like Cap Wages depth chart has Ivan on the as the fourth line left winger. Maybe there's another name that fills that, but the fact that that name would like make sense to potentially have there, yeah. I mean, so that's also kind of why I had added Gavin Brindley as a potential addition because maybe he's the playing in one of those spots.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not great.
I think it is important to mention Logan O'Connor's hurt,
Fair, yeah.
which is significant as far as the conversation is concerned. Even with him in the lineup, I'd potentially like to see like one more addition still. So I think forward we're kind of on the same page that like top half could be very good depending on Landeskog. Even if he isn't able to do a whole lot, it's still a very solid top half. And then that bottom half could be, I guess I'll call it an issue. Defensively, they look a lot or very similar to how they looked last year. Brent Burns is in, pretty much Ryan Lindgren out.
Yeah.
I don't mind that trade. Well, it wasn't an actual trade, but I kind of like that Burns will be in and most likely in a lesser role because he's still a very solid player, but I think it kind of became clear he's not moving around quite like he used to. He's 40 this year, I
I
think.
believe that's correct.
So I like him being there. Fun veteran guy, also looking for a Stanley Cup still. Blue line, I'm cool with it. Goalie, Mackenzie Blackwood, was great for them once he was acquired. Maybe he's figured it out and he's a good goalie and he's on a good team now, which is different than playing in San Jose. Can he repeat that and still be the same Mackenzie Blackwood that we saw last year? For me, especially because we're talking about a goalie, I need to see it again. It's not a straight up question mark, but I'm hesitant there a little bit. So for me, this is a good team. They're clearly a playoff team. Don't I don't know if they're as good as they were last season. I don't think they are. I think Rantanen gone and bringing in Natchez and Drury is hopefully breaking even, but might not quite be breaking even. And then Coyle being out makes their forward group look a bit thinner, and that's an issue for me as well. So I lean under.
I didn't know where you were gonna go, so I'll play the devil's advocate and just paint a little optimism in that last. So Colorado finished last year with 102 points, and things at the start of the year couldn't have been much worse. They had basically Nathan McKinnon as their only like true top six healthy forward for a stretch, I guess, and Rantanen. It was McKinnon and Rantanen basically carrying the load offensively.
Yeah.
Blue line is pretty similar. They were getting horrendous goaltending so much so they made those in-season moves to send out Alex Georgiev and bring in Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood for Justin and Noonan. So they have a much more legit 2C now. Casey Middlestat at the start of last year was not good. Bring in Brock Nelson, get Landeskog as well, and healthy Lehkonen and Nichushkin hopefully has figured things out in his life that he's going to be able to continue playing regular minutes in the NHL. Fourth line's probably a little bit better because they don't have to have AHL guys kind of filling out because everyone else is playing up in the lineup or hurt. So that's my reason for optimism. But at the same point, I still lean under. A lot of what you said is where I lean, but kind of figured I'd give the reason for optimism there. I think I'm less sold on their blue line as you are. Makar and Taze, one of the best pairs in the NHL. That's no question. But then Gerard's been fine. I used to be a pretty big Gerard fan, and I don't know. He hasn't really
Yeah.
moved the needle as much. Manson's been regressing. Burns, you kind of discussed, and then Sam Malinsky is fine.
Yeah.
But like it's Taze, Makar, and then maybe guys that ideally should all be on a third pair. Gerard maybe is a second, but
Yeah.
I,
I don't fully disagree
yeah,
by any means. Like
yeah,
I there's logic to what you're saying.
yeah. It's they're close. Like it's a very Colorado's still a good team, but I'm gonna lean. I'll stick with my leaning under. I almost talked to
Yep.
myself in my with my reasons for optimism, but I also in discount like Jonathan Druin was very solid for a couple years for them. Yes, Landeskog's an improvement, but Druin was a pretty important contributor for a couple years there. That
Yeah.
it's not an insignificant loss. So, and then the fact that they are probably going into the season with 6 million ish in cap space. That's also a little bit questionable.
Yes.
So then we conclude with the Dallas Stars. Also, again, as I had pointed out, 105.5 is their over under. I will straight out come out and say it over.
Under.
Really?
Yeah. So Matt Dumba's gone.
Oh yeah, here let's do our additions or ins
Okay.
and outs. This is exactly why I didn't say subtraction, because ins and outs. So in Nathan Bastian, I'm not even gonna try who they trade Dumba for. Cole
Kolyachonok, depth
defenseman.
depth
Yeah,
defenseman.
out. Genny Dadonov, Mikhail Granlund, Matt Dumba, and Pete DeBoer out for Glenn Glutzen in at head coach. Which I don't know how significant that's going to be or not, but anyways, now with their ins and outs out of the way, tell me why they're not getting 105 and a half.
Depth is an issue with Dallas at forward and defensively. They are an injury to one of their top players away from having major issues, in my opinion. And I'm not talking Jamie Benn or Tyler Seguin, two guys who I would love to see healthy and playing a lot, but a Robertson injury, Rupe Hintz, Rantanen, Wyatt Johnston, Matt Duchene, like very important players specifically because third line is going to be questionable. It's possible it's okay. Maverick Bork could take a clear step forward. He could also not. He hasn't yet. We're kind of looking at Sam Steele or Radek Faxa potentially being on a third line. That's not good.
Or even Colin Blackwell.
Also not good. Solid fourth line guys, but they should not be on a line that you're hoping is producing points. Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, I did mention them, but I want to say they are both getting older. Ben, it's a little more clear, but he's still fine. We'll see, though. Sagan, when he's healthy, is still playing very well, but health has been a big issue. Heiskanen was hurt last year. I'm not saying that at all to imply like he's injury prone or anything like that.
No,
But
and that was kind of a freak injury too.
right, so I am more just saying that as what we kind of saw last year. He was out, and defensively they've got another really good player, Thomas Harley. Essa Lindell's fine, but after that you're pretty thin. I don't see anyone I'm super excited about on the roster after that.
I guess I don't mind their depth as much. Point taken.
Labushkin, Lundqvist.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind Labushkin as a third pair right D. The problem is he maybe is on the second pair. I'm probably high. I think I'm probably higher on Maverick Bork than you. Actually, I obviously am, because I think he's. I don't feel as that that's necessarily a problem. So I don't hate their. I'm not saying their third line's great, but I don't hate it because I see two players that should be fine driving some play, and then Steele's not bad.
He's a decent 4C.
Yeah, I mean, again, ideally he's in a little bit lesser role, but I don't feel as bad about that. Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I'm leaning over because I think they have three players on their blue line that are very good at being able to play a lot of minutes. Like Lindell's very steady. I know he's not the biggest offensive threat,
Oh,
but
he's
he's
good
very
defensively.
steady. And then they have a pretty darn good goalie tandem in Jake Ottinger and Casey DeSmith. And Ottinger doesn't have to deal with Pete DeBoer screaming at him anymore, so that might be an improvement
Yeah.
right there. So, and last year Robertson missed time. I don't know if he ever even was
Yeah.
fully healthy the entire year. Full year of Rantanen in. Hintz missed time last year. Your depth point is very true, very well taken. Like I was trying to glance at who would be next up from like their AHL roster, and
That's not there.
defense, I can pick out some names, but forward, yeah, it's Bastion. I mean, it's Bastion, who's that's fine.
Insert a fourth line forward.
Yeah, and then it's like a Cole Lind, basic potentially, which yeah,
So I guess this is where I'm at. I say under. I think they're very much a playoff team still. For me, depth wise, a lot needs to go right, and I'm really banking on like a player like Sagan still being very good, and I think he can be. It's health.
yeah, yeah. Uh,
Where so this over and under at 105 and a half is pretty much picking over as they repeat exactly last season. And there are pros like full year of Rantanen, Robertson being healthy, but there's negatives that also for me are big enough that when I look at some teams further down in the standings that I said over on, those points need to come from somewhere.
yeah,
And to me, Dallas is for me, if I'm Dallas, I'm happy if I get to where I was last season, which is pretty much right at that over under. So I lean under. I think they get 100 points. I just think it's like 100, 102.
yeah. That's fair. I can't say that I feel great about betting either them or Colorado at that 105 and a half mark.
Yeah. That's difficult to do
Yeah, that's a lot of
with
points to
any
begin
team.
with.
It's
So
just a lot of points, but
yeah, the reality is you're going under, I'm going over, and we could be talking legitimately them being basically one win. Like you be favoring one last win, me favoring one more win, and I think that's almost where we're at.
so I'm saying under, but I could very much see them winning the division still.
Yeah,
Like
and I could see them getting basically two last year, maybe a point or two above that. I don't think they get to 110 necessarily, but
yeah.
so fantasy sleepers. I don't know. Do we give anyone for Colorado?
No. Honestly, Olafson.
If he counts, he's the obvious answer here.
I think he would count.
Okay. He had a good year in Vegas last year that maybe a little bit more known, but yeah,
Signed late though.
that's also true. Yeah,
Seems like a third line guy, but there's been enough time missed from different players in that top six that he should be getting a power play role too. So he could be a sneaky.
depending on scoring, Mackenzie Blackwood could be a good idea in goal, depending on
Yep.
especially if wins are a pretty high premium. That Mackenzie Blackwood might be a good idea because he's going to get wins. Might give up some goals in the process, but he should get some wins, and maybe he's a little lesser known than some other ones. Dallas, I'll go Maverick Bork.
Yeah, that's a fair. As far as a sleeper is concerned, I think that's kind of the pick for
Yeah.
Dallas.
Yeah. Unless people in your league don't understand that Thomas Harley probably should be a top 10 defenseman for fantasy purposes,
Yeah.
which that's possible. That's possible.
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends. Do we call him a sleeper? Probably not. But similar to what I was saying about Morrissey, like he's not going to be taken in that top group, and you might be able to find not that top group's value necessarily, but close.
Exactly. We'll wait to do our where we think the division shakes out in our kind of final preview episode because we end up doing it anyways and change what we said like a couple weeks before. So we're just gonna hold off and we'll call the episode there. Next week we'll be back with another division, probably Pacific, but we'll kind of figure out. We'll see where how our vibes are, who still is, which teams still might have some questions going into the season that need answering and everything. So appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Our content is available on AFP Analytics, same handle on Blue Sky and Threads. If you feel inclined to give us a monetary contribution, Buy Me a Coffee link can be found on our link tree, pinned at all those profiles. And again, probably end of the month, early in October, we'll take 10% of the proceeds from the Buy Me a Coffee and donate to Rochester Emergency Veterinary Service. With that, we appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you next time.